Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? My name's Rob Carmona, and welcome back to another episode of Rob the Mic. Thank you so much for all the love on last week's episode. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was kind of nervous because not that I don't get a big response from my episodes about love or anything that's like intimate and stuff like that, but I didn't think it was going to do as well as it did. So I'm always really surprised with that. But then again, I'm kind of surprised every week, again, that even people listen and or watch this. Especially last week dealing with Valentine's Day. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of it's a shot in the dark, right? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how people are going to respond. My audience is kind of all over the place, or men, women, different ages, different career choices, all these things. And whether they're single, in a relationship, a situationship, or playing the field, whatever it may be, I was really nervous about it for some reason, but the response was rad. And I wish I could say that the rest of the day worked out the way that I wanted it to. But you guys, I ended up falling into a pretty hard funk. Went like late Wednesday night, and come Thursday, a little bit of Friday, it kind of wore off like Friday night. Like I started to feel a little bit better because I like pulled myself out of it. But it was rough. It was rough, and it will kind of, I mean, once we start talking more into this episode, you guys will understand probably why the topic of this episode is the topic of this episode, right? But I just, things didn't turn out the way that I thought they were going to turn out, right? So things worked out the rest of the day for the most part. You know, I was able to see one of my buddies, spend some time with friends, and it was a great Valentine's Day as a whole. I'm not going to say that it wasn't, because honestly, it really was. Again, from celebrating my grandparents' anniversary, spending time with my family, with my mom, and just going about it that whole way. So like a family and friends approach was really nice. But again, I had something that happened that just kind of, it took me down. And I'm not going to say it's because of a person, but I'm not going to say it's not because of a person. You know what I mean? So again, that's what leads me to the topic of today's episode, but we're going to get into it. And the biggest thing was, or the biggest hurdle I had was pulling myself out of that funk, because I was trying to do it on my own. I didn't want to really reach out to friends. I didn't really want to put it on someone and ask, like, what should I do? Or how do I go about it? It was something that I knew, again, with everything that I've been dealing with, it's like, I have the tools to fix this. I can get myself out of this hole. So eventually I did. I was able to kind of, to focus on other things, to put myself in a different headspace, realize what was in front of me, realize what I needed to do, what was important, that my emotions, my feelings, everything that is, I guess, like pertaining to me, that it's very important. And I need to put myself first for multiple reasons, right? Just even the self-care alone, like I have to put myself first, my emotions, my feelings, all that. And I had an event Saturday that I was going to be shooting with some friends, and I knew that was going to get me out of it. So I started to focus on that. I started to get my gear ready, started to get everything together. And when I started doing that Friday night, kind of like Friday afternoon going into Friday night, I started to feel better. It was really weird. I think it was just because I started to prioritize myself, what I needed, what was coming, because what I was about to be focusing on was really positive. It was really good. It's really exciting. It makes me happy. You know, I know I've told you guys that before, especially with this new realm that I'm exploring and that I've been very much involved in. It makes me feel something good. It plants a seed inside of me that's growing into something really positive. And I don't want to ignore that. And sometimes I forget that, and I need to just fall back into it and just say, hey, like, this is the thing that makes you happy. This is why it makes you happy. Go through the motions, write the stuff down, you know, think about it, say your list out loud of different stuff. Not like a pros and cons type of thing, but just to remind myself, like, why this makes me happy and why I'm doing what I'm doing, so that I can reinforce the decisions that I'm making and reinforce the moves that I'm making. So knowing how good it was going to be to go to this event on Saturday, because it's not that I was planning on not going, but again, it's just I was in a heavy funk. But knowing that I was going to go and be somewhere with people that I care for and people that care for me, and, you know, they love what I do, I love what I do. So it's a culmination of a lot of really positive things. So fast forward to Saturday, it was great. The event was so great. And honestly, I'm really glad that I went and that I spent the time that I did, because my original plan was to go kind of early and then leave kind of early. I ended up staying past my projected time. And there was no issues with that. Like, I love the fact that it happened, that everything happened the way that it did. You know, I ran into the guys from the Coyotes, which is always a good time. Always a good time. You know, David, everyone that's there. So spent some time with them, which was really great. Got to walk around, take my shots, meet new people, shake some hands from different clubs and stuff like that. So it was all good vibes. And then of course, I got to spend time with my Genocide boys. So that's always a good time. Always, you know, Bams, Natasha, Mike, Jesse, like, it's all good people. It's all good people. It's all love. And the fact that both of those teams, or those clubs, I should say, that I get to spend time with them at the same time is always really, it's really good. It makes me feel good. I always feel that love. I always just feel like family. So it's nice. It feels like I'm kicking it at a family party. Between the music, the food, the vibe, it's just like, yeah, this is exactly where I needed to be. After the week, or the rest of the week that I had, I'm like, these are the people I needed to be with. To connect with them more, to talk, to laugh, to share memories, to talk about stuff that we got coming up, things that we're planning. And it's nice to be thought of in that way. You know, I know I talk about it quite a bit on here, especially regarding them, but it's nice to be thought of like that. To say, hey, you know, you're going to be here with us. And, you know, hey, wherever we're at, you're more than welcome to be there with us. You already know. But it's just, again, it's nice. It's nice. It's very heartwarming, you know. And again, and I have a lot of love for them. I have a lot of love for them. You know, David, all the guys at Coyotes, everybody. Same thing with Genocide, everybody that was there, you know, or the guys that were there with me on Saturday. Of course, I got nothing but love for. And there was an event that happened Saturday night, but I wasn't able to make it to that. But it's like, same thing. They just carried those vibes over to that event. And I saw it online and they were having a great time. And I think because of seeing that, it also brought me joy too. Because it's like, damn, that's awesome. You know, at least I got to share some time with them. And then I got to see them continue carrying that on and keep having that good time, keep having a good day. So it's nice when you can see other people having a good time, enjoying themselves, and it affects you that way. Right. And it kind of goes into play again with today's episode, which again, we're going to get into, I promise. But there's so many things, factors, and people that can have an effect on your mood, your mentality, all these things. It's almost like having that sort of reliancy on that can be a positive and a negative thing. Negative if it affects you negatively. Positive if it affects you positively. And I know for some people it's probably like, duh, but you don't really think about it until it's happening to you. Until you notice that, let's say if someone's in a bad mood and it affects you that way, if it's your partner, you know, a close friend, anything like that, and you're like, damn, all of a sudden I was having a great day and now I'm not having a great day because my person or my homie or whatever isn't having a good day. And I think this happens more so, I'd say more so in relationships. I would say more people experience this because I think with friends, you can just kind of step back and say, okay, you know, take your space, do your thing. But within relationships, it's very different, you know, because if your partner's in a good mood or your partner's cool, everything's cool. And if they're not, then it's not cool. And you know that, you know, because you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You got to chill out and you're trying to make them happy, but it might not always work all the time. But seeing the guys, you know, and the girls that were there with us continue their night and continue the good vibes, like, again, it just made me feel good. I was like, yeah, tight. Like, I'm glad my people are out there having a good time, you know? It made me feel good. I love it. I know I keep saying that like it made me feel good, but it did. And it's important. It's important to recognize that and for me to talk about that because I need these moments that I can constantly reference because when shit goes down, this is all I have to reference. Because in the moment, I don't feel like anything's going to make me feel better or anything's going to go down. But when I have these times that I can sit there and look back on, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's it. And I guess the good thing is like with season coming up, and I say with season just because now that football's over, there's so many events that are taking place on Sunday and there's so many things that are starting to go down. And even like within the slam scene too, there's events are starting to come back. There's, you know, big arena events, outdoor events, all that type of stuff. You know, Karuma just had their event in Vegas, which unfortunately I wasn't able to make it out for, but sick. You know, shouts to Taylor, shouts to everybody, the whole team at Karuma. You know, everyone's all love, all good vibes, and seeing them have a good time. And honestly, watching Taylor succeed is amazing. It's something I love. Like, I love watching him succeed. I love watching him make it, share his story, talk about the brand, and share the message that the brand is about, right? Because it's that. it's good vibes, it's family. And I think also culturally, what he's trying to push is really important for us. It's important in the automotive community. I think it's important as a generation, like for the younger generations and the people involved in this industry, because it's not something that's pushed all the time. You get this whole, like, you know, the whole sad boy, sad girl shit that was out for a while. It's like, dude, it's not cool to be depressed. I don't want to be depressed. I don't. I hate it. I hate my moments when I feel depressed, when I see my homies when they're sad, when I see my homies that are angry or like something's going on. Like, I don't want people to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that. And it's not cool to feel like it. I think it's wrong in a sense to glamorize it that way. Because you have actual people that are like here in this world that are struggling every fucking day to just get out of bed, to make a move, to do something for themselves, for their families, for anything like that. And I think with the amount of suicide that I've dealt with in this past year, it's constant reinforcement of that, of like, dude, again, it's not cool to be like that. Like, some people get it and they'll perpetuate that sort of culture because they don't understand it. They've never had to deal with certain things firsthand. And I think once you've dealt with something firsthand, you understand the gravity of the situation. And I know even as I said that, a lot of you who are watching and or listening, you're probably like, yep, that part. Because it's always different. It never affects people until it affects people. You know what I'm saying? Like, people will be like, oh yeah, dude, like I get it. And it's like, do you get it? Because if you said, you know, I get it, it's like for some people, it doesn't really, they just say it. It's just like a phrase that just comes out. But a lot of people don't really understand. They don't know. They don't get it. And for a lot of that stuff, don't get me wrong, you know, I'm not trying to attack people who haven't experienced certain things like that. I don't want people to experience what I've experienced in the last year. I don't wish that on anybody. You know, to process that many deaths, to deal with, you know, cancer, to deal with suicide, to deal with all this type of stuff. I don't want people to deal with that ever. If anybody can go their entire life without having to deal with that on a first, like a one-to-one basis, amazing. That's beautiful. That's the life I wish for everybody. I don't want people to see stuff. I'm not saying to not deal with death, but to deal with death in these ways has been really shit, right? But again, having all of these things just brings a constant perspective. And when I see happiness and people perpetuating that and pushing that culture out, I'm like, yes, more of that, less of this other shit. Because we don't need that. We don't need that. Like, that's bad. We need positivity. We need love. We need that type of pushing to be going down. Because that's what's up. That's what's up. I know some people are like, oh, that's cheesy. You know what? Call it cheesy. Call it whatever the hell you want. I want to be happy all the time. I want to feel love. I want to feel goodness all the time. You know, and I tried to carry that even the rest of my weekend. Like on Sunday too, I ended up spending it with my buddy Sebastian. And it was tight. It was his birthday. And I was like, bro, what do you want to do today? What do you want to do? I had talked to him a couple days before. I was like, yo, what's the move for Sunday? What are we doing? And he's like, dude, I just want to work on the Jeep. I said, all right, cool. So, you know, I pulled up on Sunday. It was all, you know, steady spaghetti. I said, let's go. Pull up to his house. We chilled, ate with his family, had a little barbecue. It was nice. Got to catch up with his tias, his tios. And after that, we literally worked on the Jeep the entire day. That's what he wanted. We were chilling, having some drinks, working on the Jeep, doing all the things, doing some light conversions, wiring up some stuff, doing some interior work, and seeing him in his element be so happy. And that, I'm like, damn, dude, this brings me so much joy. Like, I don't even know how else to explain it. Like, again, I know it sounds cheesy, but it brought me joy. It brought me genuine happiness to be with my brother on his birthday. Just us in the driveway working on the Jeep. There was nothing extravagant. There was nothing crazy. No, there wasn't a million people there. It was just he and I. And it kind of reminded me of like moments when we were kids. You know, we're 14 years old, 15 years old, even younger than that. Just being in his backyard, you know, playing, setting up a rail to grind with our skates or our skateboard, like whatever. Just getting into random travesuras, you know, trying to figure out shit we can do, you know, playing soccer in the back, stuff like that. It took me back to those kind of moments. And it's like, I didn't think about how much it would affect me. And I didn't realize how much his birthday and just kind of being with him and being with his family, I didn't realize how much it would affect me. And I love that. And I think for future birthdays and stuff like that, like I want to try to do things like that for myself. I'm always, especially with birthdays, I know I've talked about it with you guys before, but they're always tough days. And because I feel like I'm always trying to make other people happy. I'm always trying to do what other people want me to do, whether it's like have a dinner or go here or go there. And it's like, I don't want to do that. Like this year, I want to practice that. I want to practice doing something that I want to do and prioritize that over anything else. Like it doesn't matter if it hurts somebody else, like not in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to, like if I say no to certain things on my birthday, if I don't want to do that on my birthday, then I don't want to do it. I don't want you to take offense to it. Like this is just me personally. Let's say if I want to go up to the mountains for the day and I want certain people with me, that's all I want. That's all I want. Maybe I want to park on top of a mountain and have a barbecue with my people, the people I love the most. Maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe I want to go on a solo trip. I don't know. Maybe I take a cruise up north and just go chill, explore, get to know myself, give myself the opportunity to get to know myself. Because I feel like sometimes we as people, we rob ourselves of that because we're trying to fulfill societal roles, we're trying to fill familial roles, anything like that. And we don't give ourselves enough time to get to know one another because we learn certain things. As we get older, I think we change, and that change can be scary sometimes, but it's also really beautiful because you can realize, hey, you know what? I find joy in taking walks on the beach. And maybe you didn't think about that before. I find joy in going to my local coffee shop and sitting down and having a cup of coffee by myself, listening to music. Maybe you're on your phone, maybe you're not, but just kind of having that time. And I want to try to allow myself more of that because, again, watching Sebastian thrive in this environment, it was a real eye-opener. And I'm thankful that I got to spend the day with him. So leading into going through all of that is closing out all of that. The next day or on Monday, I had a conversation with one of my buddies Albert. And we started talking about everything. I started explaining how I was feeling throughout the week because we hadn't talked in a couple of days. Like we were talking throughout the day, but we hadn't really talked because I always try to make it a point with the people that I love and that I care for to have conversations with them, not just send memes back and forth, but, to really talk about stuff. So we start catching up on the weekend, things that we were both going through, things that we experienced, how we felt about certain things. So I started talking about, when I was talking about what I was dealing with, it brought us into a really interesting conversation. And the conversation was based on a video, or not, it wasn't a video that I had sent him, but we were talking about basically being reliant or placing our emotions, our feeling, our well-being type of stuff on other people and how dangerous it can be because of, again, this was what I was experiencing starting with the week before. Like I had put my emotions in a certain place. I had put it into a certain person and things ended up falling. And I felt a certain way because of the situation. But then I realized the adverse of that, which is when I put time into myself, when I rely on my emotions, and it's like I can make positive things happen and good things happen, right? Coming Saturday, Sunday. Those are two things that I chose to make happen. And I'm glad that I did because they affected me in a positive way. So when we were having this conversation, I said, you know what, dude, it made me think of this video. And I had seen it on Instagram. So I sent it to him and I said, check it out. This is what I was talking about. And I had just seen it recently prior to sending it to him. It just stuck in my head. And it was basically this guy talking about being in a relationship with this girl and how he was telling her how like the state of their relationship and the state of how he feels is very much reliant on her. Like if he's having a great day, or let's say like if she's having a good day, not that he puts all his energy and emotions into her and into the relationship, but if she's good, then we're good. And if she's not good, then it's like we're not good collectively. Like if you're having a bad day and you're pushing that energy out, it affects the relationship, and in turn it affects me. And I was like, right, like, dude, how do you feel about what this guy's talking about? And he goes, oh yeah, dude, this shit makes sense for sure. And people forget that. And I'm like, yeah, they do. They do. Like, not just women, but I think people, when you're in a relationship, people forget how much power that you have over one another, and that it's very easy to, let's say, ruin someone's day or make things difficult, way more difficult than they have to be. And I know for myself, oh man, like I've experienced a lot when it comes to relationships. And with my last one, my last serious relationship, it taught me a lot. And I definitely understood what this guy was talking about. And it's like, it was for me to reflect on it. I was like, damn, dude, I didn't realize it. At the time, of course, I didn't realize it, but there was so much, not that I was doing wrong, but things that like I allowed, stuff that I could have regulated myself that could have changed a lot of that. And again, watching this video and then having this conversation with Albert, we're both like, yeah, dude, this is how it goes. This is how it goes. People forget the power that they have, because we have the power to change things. We have the power to make people feel good, make people feel bad, get people through tough situations, feel like they're never going to get through that situation. Like there's a lot we can do depending on who you are to this person. But I think especially in a romantic relationship, that can have really wild effects. And they're very extreme, where they're like very good, just very bad. It's a hard in between, you know? You try to keep an in between, but when something goes down, it's like, oh, dude, like fucking Mayday. Mayday. Like we're going down. It's heavy right now. Shit's too crazy. But that's basically what I want to get into with you guys. I know it's taken us a minute to get into the topic of this episode, but I want to jump into it with y'all. And basically it's about reliancy and putting that sort of that power into someone else's hands, and like how dangerous things can be. And I was trying to think about, like, I wanted to talk to you guys about it. I just didn't know how to go about it. So what I did is I broke it up into not five categories, but five different, I guess, categories. Fuck it. Let's just go with that. 5 categories. That way I can talk to you guys about these things and not get lost in it. I think it's really easy to get lost in this topic and just kind of end up spiraling into some crazy shit. So we're not going to do that. I'm going to do my best. I am going to be looking down at my notes. For those of y'all watching, for those of y'all listening, you ain't got to worry about that part. But for those of y'all watching, don't think I'm trying not to look at y'all, but I got to look down at my notes because I wrote a couple things, trying to make sure I have this structure. That way we kind of know where we're at, and we all have something to come back to. You know, if it's like, oh, he was talking about this in this one part, like, so things like this, it helps me, and it also helps you guys, because if there's a certain part you want to reference or a certain part you want to listen to or share with your partner or your friend, your parents, something like that, colleagues at work, then at least at these points, you have something to go to, and you can say, oh yeah, at this point in time, he was talking about this. So again, I hope that these type of structures and these types of things, they help you guys out, because they help me out. And the first thing I want to get into with regards to all of that is basically like the loss of independence. And I think at the same time, when you lose that sort of independence, how it can limit your personal growth. And what I mean by that is, when you develop a dependency on somebody, it can result in making decision making, or it can result in making decisions hard to make. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And like, whether it's decisions or doing certain actions or anything like that, it can just have a really, really, really negative impact on your life, because you've put so much into this other person. So much, to a point where you start to lose yourself. And then at the same time, when you start to lose yourself, you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your abilities. Are you making the right decisions? Are you making the right choices? This can be personally, professionally, anything like that. And honestly, it can be even down to like food, choosing what you're going to eat, choosing what you're going to do. All of a sudden, you can't even make basic decisions, because all of that stuff, I feel like it compounds. And it gets worse, and it starts to build, and it starts to grow. And all of a sudden, it's like a virus that's inside you, and it spreads, and you can't do anything without this person. You need this person to basically live your life for you. You have something going on at work, you hit them up, rather than just sitting with it and saying, hey, I can figure this out. I can do it. I need to make a decision, let's say by 1 p.m. Maybe you reach out to your partner, but if you don't hear back, it doesn't mean that you don't answer. Right? It doesn't mean that you're not going to give an answer. You still have to be able to step forward and do certain things. And it's important to not forget that, and to build, and to just constantly remind yourself that even though you're in a relationship, or if you're involved with somebody, or whatever this may be, this doesn't have to be romantic, but that if it just so happens to be a romantic relationship, that you cannot lose yourself. It's very important to do that, to keep yourself afloat in the relationship. You have to. And I say you have to because you have to. You can't not do that. Because again, when you lose your independence, it starts to just affect every other part of your life. And I think when it starts to limit your personal growth, that's when things start to shift up. Because when that person's gone, or if that person is gone, or something happens, you guys break up, whatever. Oh, dude, that's where you have those moments. And you see it in the movies, right? Where it's like, I don't know who I am. And it's a real thing that happens. People forget who they are. They don't know who they are anymore. There's certain aspects that they don't know anymore that they did know in the past. I know for myself, I've gone through that for sure. I've definitely gone through that. I've gone through it in the past. I've gone through it in the present. And I have to remind myself what I went through, what I've gone through, how I've gotten myself out of holes, you know? So it's a tough one, you guys. Like, I know it's really tough, but you have to be able to find yourself and walk with yourself through any and all situations in life, whether you're in a relationship or not. It's very important to do that. And the next thing is, I think when you put so much into somebody else, it leaves you vulnerable. And at the same time, it also makes it hard to establish boundaries. So the next thing that I guess the main topics I want to talk about is that it leaves you vulnerable to manipulation, and that it's difficult to establish a boundary with this person. And the notes that I have on it, I want to read to you guys before we jump into it. And it's being emotionally reliant on someone can make you more vulnerable and manipulation, or vulnerable to manipulation or abuse. The other person may exploit their emotional dependence to control or manipulate them for their own benefit. And I think that's a really, really heavy one for that first part, because when you're emotionally reliant on somebody, sometimes when the other person is aware of that, they know what they can do so that they can say certain things or do certain things so they can benefit from the situation, right? Whether you're going to come running, whether you're going to go buy them food, whether you're going to do something, whatever, they can switch it and turn it to make it like a tool for themselves, right? But it's a tool for something bad. For you, you're trying to make this person happy. You're trying to do everything because you put this person above yourself. And they know that. These people know that. It's like the whole thing between givers and takers. Neither person knows really when to stop. The person who's giving never knows when to stop giving. The person who's taking, they never stop taking. They will just continue to do so. And the more that the giver steps up and continues to give, the taker will continue to constantly make a new standard. You know, so let's just put it in like a money circumstance. Like, okay, let's say the taker is asking for $10, the giver gives it right away. The next time the taker is asking for $50 and they get it, the giver's, does its thing. Next thing you know, it's $100, $500, 1,000, 10,000. And this is, again, I'm not saying that you're asking for this money from your partner, but these are just brief examples to show you how it works, because the giver will just think that this is what has to keep happening because I have to keep the peace with this person. And the taker is like, I'm going to get what I can because this is what's making me happy right now. And it's really fucked up that type of stuff does happen in this world, but it does. People are like that. Again, takers will always take, givers will always give. For the most part, I feel like that's been my experience. So I know for myself, I'm more of a giver. I don't ask for anything from people, but I like to give. I like to show my appreciation in different ways. I'm not saying that's like a primary love language for me, but I think there's multiple ways to give stuff, right? It doesn't just have to be in like tangible goods. It can be emotional goods, things like that, spending time with people, all of that. There's so many ways to give. But again, we got to watch out with the people who take, because they never know when to stop. And they also know how to use those tools and how to manipulate people so they can get what they want all the time. But there's so much danger in that. And for the person who is the giver, you don't see it. You don't see it when it's happening. Maybe you feel it. You start to feel emotionally drained. You start to feel like things are really heavy all the time. And that if you don't do something, this person's going to be upset. Like, when you start to realize those types of things, that's where you need to take a step back and say, oh shit, it didn't used to be like this. Now it is. Whenever I don't give this person what they want, all of a sudden it's a problem. And they treat me a certain way. They make me feel a certain way. So when it's not benefiting them, it's okay to fuck me off and make me feel some sort of way. And that's wrong, right? And I mean, dude, that's emotional abuse at the end of the day. The person is abusing you. It doesn't have to be physical abuse. for it to be bad. For me, emotional, mental abuse, that type of stuff, that fucks with you even more to a certain extent. Like, don't get me wrong. When it comes to physical, that's a whole different realm. But man, the pain that some people ensue when it comes to like mentally and emotionally is wild. And that shit can fuck you up for the rest of your life. And in situations like this, it can happen. And it happens pretty often, to be honest with you. And I think at the same time, with all those things being said, it's the second part of this topic, which was the difficulty in establishing boundaries. Because when you have that line that keeps getting crossed, you hit a certain point where it's almost dangerous to set that boundary. Because then when you do, let's say the other person blows up, or you don't set that boundary because you know they're going to blow up and you're going to lose them. But it's like, is that somebody you really want in your life? Is that something you want to have to live with forever? You constantly want to be walking on eggshells? Like, that's not a relationship. That's not how relationships work. That's not how anything in this life works. Again, not just romantic. There's professional things that this happens all the time. And you have to be able to establish boundaries. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm not doing this shit. Enough is enough. This line right here, it was already crossed, and that was my limit. That was my threshold I had set. And to be honest with you, I pushed it back multiple times, and look at where it got me. It's like, now I'm hurt. Now I'm upset. Now I feel taken advantage of. And you didn't even realize it. So sometimes you got to reinforce that and say, hey, enough is enough. This is where we're stopping. And this is why we're stopping. I'm not just telling you to stop. And granted, when somebody tells you to stop, when somebody sets a boundary with you, it's for that person, right? It's for that person. If you don't want to accept that boundary, that's a personal problem. That got nothing to do with the other person that's setting the boundary. They can set as many boundaries as they want. Again, if it affects you, personal problem. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. So I can't tell you how many times in my life where I've had to set boundaries and try to do certain things, and it bothers the other person. I'm like, well, it bothers you because now you know what the limits are. Now you understand that you can't cross this line. You can't do these things. You can't ask this of me anymore. You just can't, you know? I know for myself, that's a really difficult one, is establishing boundaries with certain people and keeping those boundaries afloat. Because I will drop the veil a little bit. I'll start to move, bring the wall down a little bit. Next thing you know, they could start to walk over that boundary. So it's still there, but it's like not there. And it's really bad. You know, I'm trying to kick that habit, especially as I get older, because I want to feel strong with what I'm doing. I want to understand myself and have faith that I know that I can handle everything that comes at me. And when I have moments where I realize that I let boundaries get crossed, I'm like, damn, dude, it's not like I feel weak, but I look at myself and I'm like disappointed. I'm like, how did you let this happen again? You knew what was going to happen and you knew it was going to go down and you just let it happen. When if you would have just stood your ground, you wouldn't be in this predicament. You wouldn't be in the situation. And it's true. It's totally true. You know, it's like they always say, the universe will teach you lessons until you've learned the lesson. It's never going to stop. It will keep presenting the same situation, the same person, whatever it is that's causing turmoil. It will keep the situation and the person present until you learn what you need to learn. And from that point forward, that's when things start to change. And that's what I'm trying to do. Again, is realize, understand, and walk forward with those things, and how important it is to keep establishing the boundaries, especially with people who make me feel some sort of way that I've become emotionally reliant on, because they know how to get around those walls. They know how to say certain things, how to get me to drop the walls a little bit, how to get me to feel comfortable, and then they can get what they want. And then it's back to square one, making me feel like shit, making me feel a certain way. And it's like, nah, dude, that's not right. It's not right. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next one, which is the impact on mental health. And at the same time, the loss of that personal identity, right? Because I think when it comes to losing yourself and the impact on the mental health that it has, it's insane, you guys. And people don't think about it. You know, it contributes to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, all of that. Because let's say if your partner's not telling you that you're pretty. Let's say to yourself, you've always thought you were beautiful, but your partner doesn't tell you you're beautiful. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to start to think, am I not beautiful? You're going to look in the mirror and then you're going to start telling yourself, I'm not beautiful. And you realize there's a certain point where when you're in a situation like that, you realize, hey, before this person, I felt this way about myself. Now, because of this person, I feel this way. And it's like, you don't need somebody else to tell you that you're beautiful to realize that you're beautiful. That's bullshit. It should never be that way. And if that's the case, I mean, that's something that you got to work on, right? Whether it's work on with yourself, do some self work, talk to a therapist, somebody like that. Because those types of things, it's not okay. And sometimes it takes a moment to build that stuff back up, but you can. And anxiety, when you're emotionally reliant on the other person, you base your happiness on this person. That's a ton of anxiety, because let's say the person's really wishy-washy. You don't know how they're going to feel today. And those types of things affect you. You could be on edge the entire day, or you could be happy, or you could be sad because of this other person. So you have crippling anxiety because of somebody else. It's not even because of what's going on in your life, or because of you, or because things that are affecting you. None of those things seem to matter, because you're focused on this other person. Again, massive red flags for yourself, things that you have to realize, like, whoa, hold on, this is bad. This is bad. Because if I really start to strip it down, my anxiety is coming from this person. It's coming from this situation, and this isn't right. That's not how you live a life. And same thing with being depressed. Maybe you feel some sort of way because of what's going on. It's like, you know what? This ain't it. This ain't it. And I think what makes it really hard too is, like, I wrote this little piece. I think if I read it, it'll make a little more sense. When you're unable to consistently meet the other person's emotional needs, people start to become so enmeshed in the other person's life that they struggle to differentiate themselves or pursue their own interests or their goals. And that has to deal with loss of identity, right? Because you're so focused on the other person, on their life, on what makes them happy versus what makes you happy, what makes you tick, what makes you feel some sort of way. And we can't lose ourselves. As much as we are involved with somebody else, whether it's a friendship, whether it's professional, anything like that, all of these things apply. They're very flexible. They all apply to all those situations. We have to remember, we are the only ones that can control how we feel, right? It's like we've talked about in the past. The way that you feel is based on thoughts that you have. And a lot of those thoughts are not even real. So when you strip them down and you realize that there's so much power and peace in that. Like, I can't tell you how many times last week I felt some sort of way and I started spiraling in my head. And then when I sat down and I stopped and I realized, like, yo, none of this shit is real. What I'm feeling is based on hypotheticals that I'm thinking of, situations that haven't even happened and are probably not going to happen. But where am I right now? Let's say at those moments, like, I'm sitting in my room. I'm completely safe. I'm protected in every way, shape, or form. Let me just be here. Let me just chill. Let me breathe for a second. I have my certain exercises and my meditations that I do. I sat in those and brought myself back down to ground zero. I said, all right, cool. This is where we're at. This is what's going on. But this is what happens when you lapse. Because for myself, like, I lapsed and I started to become emotionally reliant on somebody else. I was basing my happiness on somebody else, and look at what it was doing to me. It affected me in a negative way. And I didn't want that shit anymore. So I had to stop it at that time. We don't always have that moment. And I don't always have that either. I'm not fucking perfect. I'm far from it, to be honest with you. I forget that shit all the time. I just have moments where I can catch myself. And when I do catch myself and I can't get myself out of it, I'm like, oh shit. Tight. You fucking did it. Go you. And you keep it pushing. But it's tough when you're dealing with all of that. Because again, the emotional reliancy with other people forget the mental impact and what also goes hand in hand with losing your identity. Because those types of things, they have the heaviest impact that they can on you. And I think it tends to get walked over, and it shouldn't. And the last thing is, like, difficulty. When you become reliant on somebody else, it makes it difficult to cope with change. It makes it really, really difficult to cope with change. You do really bad with it. You don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to deal at all. And then this is another thing. Like, I wrote a little piece on this too. It said people who are emotionally reliant on somebody else can find it challenging to cope with changes in the relationships or external circumstances. They may feel overwhelmed or lost with the other person's constant presence and support, like with or the lack thereof their presence or support. Because all of a sudden you just feel like you can't do anything. I know it's like we kind of talked about this earlier, right? But it's like when changes start to happen and when that person isn't there to support you, it doesn't mean that the change isn't going to happen, because the change is still going down. But I think sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, that things will move forward, right? And it's just, it shows you time. And they say, oh, time heals all. But it does and it doesn't, right? It depends how much you want to hold on to certain things and how you want to navigate certain things. But when you realize that the change is going to happen regardless, that it's inevitable, that's when things start to make a difference. Because you realize, oh shit, you know what? This is it. This is it. It's going to happen with or without them. So I got to make do. I got to make do with what I got. And when you start to find yourself again, that's when you start to become reliant on yourself. When you realize you're the controller, you're the master of your emotions, you start to gain that power again. You start to gain and feel that sort of independence. It makes you feel like a whole person again. I know for myself, I remember catching moments of that. And when I started to feel it, I felt so good. It felt so good. I was like, oh my God, dude, this is what it was like. I remember this now. I remember what it was to make decisions for me. I remember what it was to go eat something that I wanted to eat. You know, I had a period in time where there was a diner that I would go to. I'd go every week because it made me happy. I started to realize I can do that because I can go get a milkshake if I want to. I can go have a sundae if I want to. And I can just chill. So I would sit at the bar in this diner and just have whatever I wanted. Have a dessert. Sometimes I'd go and have dinner, just be by myself. It was cool. It was a really cool time. And granted, I can start doing it again, but like, I don't need that right now. I don't need to go do those things to make me happy. But in that moment, that's what I needed. And I started to realize and become reliant on myself. Say, yo, let's do this for us. Let's make ourselves happy right now. Let's go get a cookie sundae. Let's go get a milkshake. You know, whatever. Let's go for a drive just because you want to go for a drive. Things like that. So I had to start to learn how to get back to square one with myself and become reliant on my emotions instead of giving it to somebody else. And knowing that there's going to be a day, of course, that I get back into a romantic relationship and that I will put some of my reliance, some of my emotional reliance on this person. I will base it on them. You know, if they're good, we're good. I will for sure go back into that. But I think there's going to be a healthier place for me to do that from. And that I will understand, hey, regardless of the situation, I still got me. I still got to take care of myself. It's the other person. It's not their responsibility to make me happy every day. It's not their responsibility to make me feel some sort of way every single day. It's my responsibility. If the other person isn't having a good day, I can still have a good day. I can be supportive to them in ways that they need. I can extend my hand, extend whatever they need to try to make them feel better, to try to make things okay. But if I don't, I'm not the bad guy. It's not my fault. Like, I can be a bad guy to a certain extent, right, in their story, but I have to know truly in my heart, soul, mind, body, that I'm not the problem. I'm just here trying to live my life. And the other person that's in my life just maybe so happens to be going through it right now. And it's okay. You can still be happy while somebody else is not. And you can do your best to try and make this person feel some sort of way and be okay. But if it doesn't work out, it's all right. It doesn't make you a bad guy. You can still walk forward, you know? And with all of those things being said, I tried to think about some advice, and I know I usually give you guys like, you know, a sentence or two. And I couldn't come up with anything solid. I couldn't. I was sitting here spinning, like, what the fuck, man? It's like, well, you know what? What if I break it into points, right? Because it doesn't always have to be a sentence. It doesn't always have to be some motivational quote or something like that. It can just be points that I want to talk to you guys or remind you guys of, you know? And the 3 things that I came up with were cultivate and grow your independence, communicate openly, and prioritize your self-care. And what I mean by cultivate and grow your independence is kind of what I was talking about right before I was talking to you guys about the advice, which is take your garden that is your emotions, that is your self, and constantly water it. Give yourself things that you need. Learn and have moments where you realize that whatever you do is what makes you happy and makes you feel some sort of way. Because when you have those moments to reflect on, you can say, okay, I got the power. I know what to do. I know how to make myself feel better. If I'm in a funk, something's going on. Ooh, I know exactly where to go in the garden. I know exactly where to go to make me feel better. And you can do that. You can do that. You start to build your toolbox. And we all need those tools. I don't care what anybody says. We all need those tools. Because we all, to a certain extent, at one point or another, can become emotionally reliant on other people. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to do that. But what I'm saying is, when you do that, to realize that you can't lose yourself at the same time. If you fully let go of yourself, then you end up falling into all these things that we were talking about in this episode. And it can become a massive problem. Not even just a little problem. It can become a massive problem because that shit can ruin your everyday life. And nobody needs that. You don't need that anxiety. You don't need that stress. You don't need that tower over you, you know? You don't need that shit. And when you grow your independence that way, it makes you feel strong. It makes you feel like you can stand on your own and you don't need somebody else to be next to you for you to have that sort of self-worth. And again, these are things that I'm working on constantly, every single time, every single day. To get myself up, I have to realize, look in the mirror, have my moments with myself and say, all right, cool. Let's run it up. Let's make it happen. And when I talk about communicate openly, I really do mean that. Create that safe space with the people around you. Talk about your feelings, talk about your emotions, talk about why you feel this way, what's making you feel that way, and that the other person can communicate them too. And it's a judgment-free zone. It's really important to have this sort of open communication with your friends, family, at work also. That's a big one, at work. But romantic, you got to open that door, keep those windows open, keep everything open all the time. That this is a place we talk. I feel like when it comes to romantics, you got to really keep that shit open even more than anything else. Because the other person doesn't know, they don't know you. They can't read they know you, right? But you can't read somebody's mind. So talk about it. Talk about all the things and make it okay to talk about them. You know, set moments, set times. So whatever, like, hey, I want to spend some time with you because I want to talk to you about something that's going on. Boom, boom, boom. Break it down. And make it okay to do that. Because I think you hear this, there's a big stigma between like when you tell your partner, oh, hey, we got to talk. It's not always something bad. It doesn't have to be a bad situation. It can just be like, I need to talk to you about something. Let's run it. Let's go. Let's talk about it. Because it's been eating away at me, or I've been thinking about it. It's been on my mind. And when you create that safe space to do that, it makes it okay to do stuff like that. And it's important. It's important to have those spaces, and also it prevents misunderstanding. I think that's a really important one too, to mention. Because that's the last thing you ever want to do is like assuming and all that type of stuff. It's gray areas. Get rid of the gray areas. Make shit black and white in your relationships. Any relationship, again, romantic, friendship, familial, professional, anything like that. Remove the grays. Make shit black and white. Make it black and white and make it okay to just talk about things safely without judgment. And the last thing, when it came to prioritizing your self-care, again, prioritize that. Look at yourself. What is it that you need to make yourself happy? What makes you feel good? And go about it like that. Run your life like that. Don't put yourself and your happiness in somebody else's hands. Because the moment you do that, if they drop it, that plate's going to break. And that's nobody's fault but yours. Because you gave that plate to somebody else when you should have been carrying it yourself. So remember that. It's important, y'all. So I hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode. Hopefully it starts up some conversations. It sparks up some things. Maybe it made you guys think a little bit. Leave some comments below. Shoot me a DM. Let's have conversations, y'all. Again, that's why we do this. That's why we come here every week, because we want to have these conversations. We want to talk about shit. We want to go through it. This is what makes relationships strong, is communication. And the way I talk about communicating openly, that's what we do here on this show. And I want you guys to always feel safe to communicate with me, to talk to me about whatever it is. Whether it's heavy, whether it's something light, whether it's funny, sad, anything like that. You guys are more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. And I will do whatever I can. And if it's something I can bring on the podcast and we can talk about it as a whole, we talk about it as a collective, then we'll do that. If it's stuff that you want to talk about with me, we can do that too. It's however you guys want to do it. But again, I appreciate you, every single one of y'all, for coming back every week. Whether you watch, whether you listen, in any way that you take in this podcast. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for your love, your light, everything that you give to me. I appreciate y'all. And I'm sending you nothing but love, good vibes, all the good things. And I will catch you guys next week on the next episode.